y'all, welcome back to my channel. Megan here. Today I wanted to take the opportunity to share my first labor and delivery story. A couple of prerequisites. I had a pretty straightforward pregnancy. I was really fortunate. I did, the typical nausea, not feeling well, um, aches, pains, swelling, but really nothing super detrimental. I was really fortunate to have a very healthy pregnancy. The only concern from my doctor was in regards to gestational diabetes. I did pass that test. However, just due to the concerns, I did make changes in my eating habits to help ensure that there were not going to be any concerns for a large baby and cutting back on carbs. Pretty straightforward, unfortunate, but gosh, very small in the scheme of things. I was also GBS positive at the end, so ultimately my goal was to be doing labor and delivery as natural as possible. My husband and I did attend a childbirthing class. I did also I used Aeroflow to get my breast pump, and there was a few classes that I could take with insurance as well to get that for free through them. So I did take a few of those classes as well in preparation. Can totally go into more details in another video with those, but just wanted to give a couple of quick highlights in regards to what my preparation was and where things were at with my pregnancy. Also listened to a lot of YouTube videos and a lot of other women's stories, so I thought this would be a great opportunity for me to share my story because I know how helpful those videos were to other women, and just wanted to also get my story out there in case this can help somebody else in the situation and what they're going through. And jumping into things, so I was overdue. Not really overdue. I hit 40 weeks. I needed to get a stress test done and got that stress test done. Doctor asked if I was feeling any of the contractions. I was not feeling anything at the time and said things were looking great. So we were given the okay to continue on. We scheduled another appointment out 2 or 3 days. Well, the 2 nights before really labor really kicked off, the 2 nights before, I had on and off contractions. I never had Braxton Hicks contractions throughout my pregnancy, and the 2 nights before I was up just very often, very frequently, just with these very light contractions. Sometimes they'd be 10 minutes apart, sometimes they'd be 15 minutes apart, and sometimes further, like 25 minutes, 30 minutes. But it was enough that I would be woken up, and so I actually just went out to the living room, turned on some Harry Potter. Sometimes I was bouncing on the ball. Sometimes I was just laying on the couch, just trying to relax and fall back asleep. And sometimes I did fall back asleep. And just, overall, just trying to get some sleep. And I was still working at the time. I was working up until the baby was born. And I was fortunate enough to be working from home. So again, I had some great flexibility. And so those 2 nights before were really rough and really tiring just because I was up like constantly throughout the night and just was not getting solid sleep. So on that 3rd day, going into that 3rd night, again, these contractions, I would call them, I guess you could call them contractions, looking back at it, they were very light, just enough to wake me up. Each morning they would go away. So then I'd go to work and be fine, no problem, have a normal day, go on a long walk, no big deal. Well, finally, going into the 3rd night. So again, second rough night in a row, get up in the morning, have a normal work day, and I worked till about 3, 4 o'clock that day. And once I was done with work, things actually, I was having contractions during the day, which was the first time I actually had them. And so my husband was working late that day. He was working till 9. So on his lunch break, we went for a walk and things kind of continued, but did space out a bit more. Again, nothing super consistent, but we did just, walk around the block a little bit just to be like, hey, are these going to stick around? And they did. And so we got back, and my husband, was finishing his work day, and I was out in the living room, and just, yeah, I just started. Things seemed to be consistent enough that I started timing them, just downloaded a random app and was using. Things definitely seemed to be picking up, and eventually went and talked to my husband probably around like, I don't know, 7 p.m. and went and talked to him, decided to give the hospital a call because, yes, we went to classes and understood, I think it's like the 5-5-1-1 rule. Contractions are 5 minutes apart, lasting 1 hour for duration of 1 minute long. And I was hitting that, but everyone said that you'll know when to go into the hospital, and it just wasn't there, even though the time was there. It just didn't feel like they were there. They were challenging, don't get me wrong. They were, painful, almost like a hard, like stinging in the belly, just like really like the contraction just held. And so that was the pain, the discomfort that I was experiencing, but it wasn't, I could still talk through them at this point. So called the hospital. And again, they said, wait longer. And so I did. And my husband was still, he knew I was calling the hospital just to like hear from them. Just needed that reassurance of the, hey, first time mom here, first experience, don't know what to expect, here's what's going on. So it felt good for them to just say, hey, like wait longer. And so we did. And then around when my husband was done with work around 9 o'clock, he was like, why didn't you tell me sooner that this is what you've been experiencing? But to each their own, because that's how I deal with things. It's the, hey, like, I know you're working, I got this, I don't need you at this point. Like, I was coping fine on the bouncy ball, had Harry Potter playing, and then it turned into me swaying and kind of leaning on the table and swaying to work through them. And that's when he was done with work. So he started getting things ready. We already had our bag packed, so he started getting stuff ready to head to the hospital. And I, went and got like redressed and contacts in, and, also got ready to go to the hospital because I was like, no, like I just want to wait a little bit longer. But then I had one contraction that was definitely like, whoa, okay, we need to go. It felt way more challenging, way more difficult. So head to the hospital. Very fortunate, we're only like 10-15 minutes away from the hospital. So my husband, took care of contacting my mother-in-law and my best friend, because they were going to be all of my support people. My husband, mother-in-law, best friend were going to be there with us in the hospital, helping me with labor and delivery. So he contacts them, and they just want, first time mom, they want, to be like, hey, let us know after you get to the hospital where things stand. So we get there, get to triage. The doctor, the nurse comes in, asks all the questions. The doctor comes in. It's a teaching hospital, so it's, a resident. And he checks me. And as he's removing his hand, my water breaks. He's like, well, even if we weren't going to keep you, we're going to keep you now. Because he broke my water, which is really unfortunate. But I was 5 centimeters, so I was going to be admitted either way. So water broke, we're in triage, working through the contractions. And actually when I lay down for them, to have put the sensors on, things seemed to ease up, so they weren't as bad, versus when I was at home and kind of swaying that side to side. So 5 centimeters, we get admitted. Again, they were able to get me bouncy ball right away, so that was great. So continued on the bouncy ball, still was able to talk and have conversations. And my best friend gets there, mother-in-law gets there, was still able to be like coherent and present. And then there was a point where I think the nurse came in and needed me to switch up positions. Baby was not happy in whatever position I was in. So get into the bed, and unfortunately, looking back at it, I don't know why mentally I thought once I got into the bed, that was it. Like I did not get back out of the bed, which is really unfortunate because I wanted to be mobile, but things just really intensified and became a blur at this point. So I got into the bed. The nurse was really pushing the IV fluids through my IV, which again, I didn't really want an IV, but I got the IV because I needed it for the antibiotics since I was GBS positive. So was getting the antibiotics for being GBS positive and was in the bed. The nurse did get me a peanut ball, which was great, but man, it really, it was tough. The contractions just got worse and worse. And at this point, I was starting to really struggle with coping. I was starting to grunt more and yell more and was just not doing very well. My mother-in-law came over and asked, so I told my support people, like, hey, you can ask me 3 different times if I want the epidural, because I was open to it, but it was not my preference, but I also didn't know what to expect, so I was open to getting an epidural. She came over and asked me at this point if, I wanted it, and I did say yes, because before that, I did ask to get checked again. That was like 7 centimeters at that point. Again, I don't know timeline, except for like the events that I remember. I don't know exactly what time. We went into the hospital around like 11 p.m. Just as like different timestamps. So we got to the hospital around 11 p.m., went through triage, got admitted into a room. And so with 7 centimeters, I was in the bed at this point laboring. I had the peanut ball between my legs, and that's when my mother-in-law asked, if I was, wanting the epidural, and I said yes. But actually, even before this point, sorry, I forgot one key point. When I was laboring on the bouncing ball before I got into the bed, I had options for, pain medication and just help. I did ask for a dose of fentanyl, and that was glorious. It was just a shot that they administered through the IV, and that took me back like to where I was when I first entered the hospital, where I was able to have conversations in between contractions and just was fully present. However, once I got into bed, I asked for another dose of that, and I did get it, but it did nothing. It didn't even take the edge off of the contractions. It did nothing. So mother-in-law, asking if I wanted the epidural at this point, I actually said yes and agreed to it, which I wasn't thrilled about, but all I kept thinking was, I don't know how much longer this is going to be. I don't know how much longer this is going to take. Like, I don't know how much more I can do. I mean, at this point, my eyes are closed and shut. I'm just full on like hands clenched, just not doing well. Grunting, yelling. And so went to get the anesthesiologist. The anesthesiologist was, this is in the middle of the night at this point. The anesthesiologist was in on a surgery. Doctor comes in, the student comes in, the resident comes in and checks me again. I was 9.5 centimeters. So they start preparing things, getting things ready, and I do start pushing. They had me do like a couple of practice pushes. Not super thrilled about the pushing technique. Again, didn't do as much preparation as I should have, looking back on things in regards to pushing, and how I wanted that to unfold. The typical hospital, hold your breath, count to 10, push, bear down. Wasn't super happy, wasn't really vibing with it, but I just didn't know any better in the moment. Like I was just not even able to comprehend and even think about what other options I had at that point. And I didn't prep my support people or have any notes on how I wanted to push. So not bad, not negative, just is what it is. So was pushing at this point, and the doctor came in. Not my doctor that I was seeing throughout my pregnancy, another doctor, and started pushing. Things were going well. And there was one point where I actually was able to calm myself down enough that I actually opened my eyes for a little bit. And I just remember seeing the resident doctor just looking bored. And everyone, anyone that's been through labor and delivery knows that you're kind of waiting for that next contraction, that next wave before you start pushing again. And I just remember his face just looking bored as he was waiting, which is unfortunate because that just sticks with me through this story, through my memories. But again, it's not a big deal. It was fine. The unfortunate thing, though, that did happen was the doctor did perform an episiotomy, and that was one thing I did not want unless there was a reason as to why it was needed. Um, and my husband, who was present and able, he noticed as he was making the cut. So not anyone's fault, just really was not what I was wanting. And to anyone who may have had a similar experience, or to anyone that is, going into labor and delivery, is currently pregnant, my thoughts were, okay, like my nurses had my plan, but ultimately the doctor makes those decisions. So maybe preparing your support person for when that doctor comes in to say, hey, my significant other does not want X, Y, and Z, and making it very clear and having that conversation before. I mean, obviously things are happening quick, like things are crazy, things are chaotic, so it's like, hey, if this could happen, great. That's the only thing I could see that could have maybe prevented things just that happening without either of our knowledge, because I was not coherent, I was not paying attention. But he did say it out loud, and that's when my husband noticed what was happening as he was making the cut. So the doctor made that decision, and I did not know that was happening. Was continuing to push, and baby was born. So from my perspective, when baby was born, baby was just put right up onto my chest, and things were great. However, my eyes were literally jammed shut. I was yelling and screaming, so I did not fully know what was going on, except for when baby was born, they were telling me, open your eyes, open your eyes, open your eyes. Which just goes to tell you how out of it I was. But my husband said when our baby was born, the cord was wrapped around his neck twice. They had to cut the cord, get that removed. So when my husband did cut the cord, it just was, the final cut, for the umbilical cord. So after that was made, apparently they had to put him upside down and, hit him on the back a few times, get him breathing. Again, I did not know any of this happened. And apparently there was a knot in the umbilical cord as well. So again, then baby was put on my chest, and all was great, all was well. I was doing well, baby was doing well. I just made the timeline for getting that second dose of the antibiotics, so we didn't have to stay extra time in the hospital, which was super nice. The nurses told me after that I had pushed for 26 minutes. Again, I was expecting, 2+ hours is what you hear in childbirthing, preparation. So, well, that was cool to hear, because I had no recollection, no idea of how much time had passed. So that was great to hear. Just really unfortunate about the episiotomy. So got stitched up, and things were great. Things went well. We were all healthy, and it was just such a blur. Wow, it was just a lot all at once, and super painful. Obviously, I felt like I've said this so many times. I felt like an animal, like a primal animal, where everything just went out the window. I didn't care. I was just doing what I needed to do to work through this. So, and the anesthesiologist apparently came in while I was pushing and was like, oh, doctor said your services are no longer needed. So that worked out, because again, my goal was to be as natural as possible. So me not getting the epidural was great. Yes, I did ask for it in the end, but I am so thankful that things happened the way that they happened, because that is what I wanted ultimately. Ultimately, I didn't want the epidural. So I'm thankful that did not happen, and I truthfully believe things do happen for a reason, even if we don't know the reason for it right away. So I was just very thankful that it worked out the way that things worked out. We were all healthy. I was super thankful that my mother-in-law, my best friend, were able to be there. Baby was born a little after 5 a.m. So I was also thankful that, hey, I wasn't laboring super long in the hospital. So timing just really worked out really well. Just the episiotomy was unfortunate, and I wish I had done more preparation for coping, and just the mental preparation. But again, to each their own, you learn as you go. So if you're listening to this, I would definitely recommend and suggest, hey, just doing more mental preparation, more breathing technique practices with your partner, with your support person, to help you cope. And for me, I wanted to be moving around, but as soon as I got into that bed, I I did not have the mental capacity to even think about getting up. It's the, okay, this is my situation. How am I moving? I was moving around in the bed into different positions, but the thought that kept coming back to me was that the more painful, the more challenging it is, the sooner I'm going to be done with this. And literally that's what got me through, because the peanut ball made things really rough and really challenging, but I just kept telling myself I knew that by staying in this position with how painful it was, that things were progressing, things were going well, things were progressing, and the quicker things progressed, the sooner this was going to be done. And as soon as our baby was born, there was nothing. Like, everything just stopped. My body knew what to do, and it was amazing. So if you made it this far, thank you for listening. I'm sure I missed a lot of details, but feel free to ask me any questions. Again, this is just my story, and I wanted to share it because I know how many other women's stories that I listen to on YouTube. So thank you for getting this far, and stay tuned for my next video.